Standing on the weathered stones of an ancient aqueduct, you can't help but feel a humbling sense of awe. How did civilizations thousands of years ago, without the aid of computers or machinery, create structures so precise they still stand today? Beneath our modern cities, hidden in the bones of our infrastructure, lies the silent genius of forgotten engineers whose innovations shaped the world we know. This is the story of the unspoken pioneers, the masterminds of antiquity who turned impossible challenges into enduring marvels. Their roads still guide our highways, their sewers still echo in our plumbing, and their bridges still inspire the spans we cross every day. They were the silent architects of civilization, and their legacy is etched into the very ground we walk on. Think about the last time you turned on a faucet or drove down a smooth highway. How often do we stop to consider that these everyday conveniences were born from ideas perfected millennia ago? The Romans didn't just build roads, they engineered a network so durable that some routes are still in use today, layered with materials and techniques we've only recently rediscovered. The Indus Valley civilization didn't just dig drains, they designed the world's first sophisticated sewage system, a feat unmatched until the industrial age. These weren't just random acts of construction, they were calculated, visionary acts of engineering that defied their time. And yet their names are lost to history, their methods shrouded in mystery. What if I told you that the solutions to some of our most pressing modern challenges, water scarcity, sustainable cities, even disaster resilience, might already exist, buried in the forgotten blueprints of ancient innovators? This journey isn't just about marveling at the past, it's about uncovering the hidden threads that connect their brilliance to our present. From the underground aqueducts of Persia to the earthquake detectors of ancient China, these silent engineers left behind clues that could inspire the future. So let's step off the beaten path of history and into the workshops of the past, where ingenuity thrived without fame, where every stone placed was a testament to human potential. The modern world didn't emerge from nowhere. It was built on the foundations laid by hands we've yet to fully thank. Ready to meet them, the mystery begins with a single block of stone, some weighing more than 100 tons, perfectly carved and fitted into place without a single scratch out of alignment. How did ancient builders achieve such impossible precision with what we assume were rudimentary tools? Take the Great Pyramid of Giza, where millions of limestone blocks were hauled into place with such accuracy that even today, you can't slip a credit card between them. Or the Incan walls of Sacsayhuaman, where massive stones interlock like puzzle pieces without a drop of mortar, surviving earthquakes that would topple modern buildings. These weren't just feats of strength, they were masterclasses in engineering physics. One theory points to simple machines like levers and ramps. The Egyptians might have used wooden sledges dragged over wet sand to reduce friction, a technique depicted in tomb paintings. But here's the twist: experiments show that even with these methods, moving a 2.5-ton block would require hundreds of workers pulling in unison. That's where ingenuity kicks in. The Incas, for example, carved proto-handles into stones, allowing ropes to grip them better, while the Olmecs may have used rounded logs as rollers, a concept that evolved into modern conveyor systems. Then there are the more controversial ideas like acoustic levitation. Ancient texts from Tibet and Egypt speak of stones being made light through sound. While it sounds like myth, physicists have demonstrated that certain frequencies can reduce friction or even suspend small objects in midair. Could ancient engineers have harnessed vibrations to maneuver massive slabs? We may never know for sure, but the idea isn't as far-fetched as it seems. Modern construction now uses vibration plates to compact soil and settle foundations, a distant echo of these ancient theories. What's undeniable is their legacy. The same principles behind Inca stone fitting, distributing weight evenly to withstand seismic shifts, are used in earthquake-resistant skyscrapers today. And those wooden cranes the Romans adapted from Greek designs, they inspired the steel giants that build our cities. Perhaps the most humbling lesson isn't how they moved these stones, but why, without lasers or blueprints, they understood balance, patience, and the laws of nature in ways we're still unraveling. Their primitive tools weren't limitations, they were invitations to innovate. Consider the sheer ambition of building a road network that could stretch over 250,000 miles, connecting an empire that spanned 3 continents. Roman engineers didn't just lay down paths, they designed highways meant to outlast empires. The secret, a meticulous, layered construction method that modern road builders still study. At the base, they packed large stones for stability, followed by crushed gravel mixed with clay to create a flexible yet firm foundation. Then came the genius touch, a top layer of interlocking volcanic rock slabs, fitted so tightly that even after 2,000 years, some sections remain intact enough to drive on today. But durability wasn't their only breakthrough. Roman roads were masterclasses in hydrology. Engineers angled surfaces slightly outward, creating a camber that allowed rainwater to drain into roadside ditches instead of pooling and eroding the structure. Some routes even included small bridges over streams, ensuring uninterrupted travel during floods. This wasn't just about convenience, it was about control. A legion could march 25 miles a day on these roads, responding to threats with unmatched speed. Trade caravans moved spices from Arabia and silk from China along these same routes, fueling an economy as interconnected as today's. The materials themselves tell a story of innovation. Romans weren't just throwing rocks together, they developed a primitive form of concrete by mixing lime and volcanic ash, a recipe so resilient it's inspired modern, self-healing cement research. And their obsession with straight lines, surveyors used a tool called a groma to align roads across mountains and valleys, refusing to detour even for nature's obstacles. When they met a hill, they carved through it. When they hit a swamp, they built raised causeways. The message was clear: Rome bent the landscape to its will. Perhaps the most striking parallel to today lies in their purpose. These roads weren't just infrastructure, they were the internet of antiquity, transmitting ideas, culture, and power. The phrase, "all roads lead to Rome," was literal. Every route reinforced the empire's central authority while enabling local economies to thrive. Sound familiar? Our modern highways follow the same blueprint, connecting ports, factories, and cities in a web of interdependence. The Via Appia, stretching from Rome to Brindisi, functioned like an ancient interstate, complete with rest stops where travelers could swap horses and officials could check cargo. Yet for all their brilliance, Roman engineers left no signed blueprints. Their names are lost, but their work whispers to us through the grooves worn by countless chariot wheels. Those ruts remind us that infrastructure isn't just about getting from place to place, it's about shaping civilizations. When you drive on a highway today, you're riding the legacy of engineers who understood that to build a road is to build the future. 5,000 years before modern skyscrapers, while much of the world still relied on open pits for waste, the engineers of Mohenjo-Daro designed something revolutionary: a city where every home had running water and waste disappeared underground like magic. Picture this: terracotta pipes snaking beneath brick streets, covered drains with precisely calculated slopes, even manholes for maintenance access. This wasn't just advanced for its time, it surpassed European sanitation standards well into the 1800s. How did a Bronze Age civilization crack the code of urban hygiene so flawlessly? The answer lies in their obsession with order. Unlike haphazard settlements of their era, Mohenjo-Daro was meticulously planned on a grid, with every drainage decision serving a purpose. Each house connected to a central sewer line through clay pipes that fit together like Lego blocks, sealed with bitumen to prevent leaks. But here's the stroke of genius: the pipes weren't just buried randomly. Engineers angled them slightly downward, using gravity to keep water flowing toward the city's outskirts. That's physics mastered millennia before Bernoulli's equations. Then there were the drains themselves, not open trenches, but brick-lined tunnels covered with stone slabs to block debris and odors. Some were wide enough for a person to crawl through for repairs, proving maintenance was part of the original design. Archaeologists even found sedimentation tanks where water slowed just enough for impurities to settle, a primitive version of modern wastewater treatment. What's truly staggering is how little they left to chance. The system accounted for monsoon floods, with overflow channels diverting excess water to prevent backups. Compare that to 19th century London, where cholera outbreaks forced engineers to finally adopt covered sewers, 30 centuries after Mohenjo-Daro had perfected the concept. The legacy of these innovations echoes in today's cities. Modern water managers still study Indus Valley techniques, especially their use of natural materials. Those terracotta pipes, they resisted corrosion better than some metal alternatives, a lesson driving today's research into ceramic plumbing components. And their gravity-fed design, it's the backbone of most municipal sewer systems, proving ancient engineers understood efficiency long before the age of pumps. Perhaps the most profound lesson isn't technical but philosophical. The people of Mohenjo-Daro viewed clean water and waste removal not as luxuries, but as civic rights, a mindset our modern world is still striving to universalize. When you flush a toilet today, you're participating in a tradition of sanitation that began with artisans who shaped clay pipes by hand, unaware they were building the future one perfect joint at a time. Beneath the sun-baked deserts of ancient Persia, engineers devised a solution to water scarcity so ingenious that it transformed barren landscapes into flourishing oases without a single pump or electric motor. The Kanat system, a network of gently sloping underground tunnels, tapped into distant mountain aquifers and guided water across miles of arid land using nothing but gravity. Picture this: workers digging vertical shafts deep into the earth at precise intervals, then connecting them with horizontal passages so perfectly angled that water flowed steadily, never too fast to cause erosion, never too slow to stagnate. These weren't just ditches, they were mathematical marvels, hydrology mastered over 2,000 years before modern engineers coined the term sustainable sourcing. The genius of qanats lay in their simplicity and foresight. By keeping water underground, Persian builders minimized evaporation in scorching climates, a stark contrast to open canals that lose up to half their volume under the sun. Each tunnel began at a mother well, drilled into water-rich layers beneath foothills, then stretched as far as 20 miles, emerging at the surface only near farms or settlements. Along the route, vertical access shafts served dual purposes. They provided oxygen for maintenance crews and functioned as early climate control, allowing cool air to circulate and prevent the tunnels from collapsing under the desert heat. But here's what truly astonishes: qanats required no external power, yet they regulated flow like modern infrastructure. Engineers used graded slopes, typically a 1 to 2% drop per mile, to maintain steady currents. If water rushed too quickly, they installed small weirs or bends to reduce speed. Some systems even included underground reservoirs to store excess during rainy seasons, functioning like natural batteries for dry periods. This wasn't just engineering, it was poetry in motion, a dialogue between human ingenuity and the Earth's rhythms. The legacy of these tunnels whispers through today's water crises. In arid regions from Morocco to Chile, revived qanats provide drought-resistant irrigation, offering lessons for a warming world. Modern hydrologists study their passive cooling techniques to reduce energy use in desalination plants, while urban planners look to their decentralized design as a model for resilient water grids. Even the concept of sponge cities, which absorb and reuse rainwater, owes a debt to Persia's underground networks. Yet the qanat's most enduring lesson might be philosophical. In an age of megadoms and groundwater depletion, these ancient systems remind us that sustainability isn't about overpowering nature, it's about collaborating with it. When you turn on a tap today, remember, some of the smartest water solutions weren't invented in labs, but carved patiently into the earth by hands that understood balance long before it became a buzzword. Flames that clung to ships like liquid death, burning even on water. This was the terror of Greek fire, Byzantium's most closely guarded secret. Imagine being an enemy sailor in the 7th century, watching in horror as a fiery jet arced from a bronze tube, igniting everything it touched. The Byzantine Empire wielded this weapon for centuries, repelling invasions and dominating naval battles, yet its exact formula vanished with the fall of Constantinople. What made it so devastating, and why have modern scientists struggled to recreate it? Ancient accounts describe a substance that defied nature's rules. Unlike ordinary fire, Greek fire couldn't be extinguished with water. Some texts suggest it burned fiercer when doused, a trait eerily similar to modern napalm. Historians speculate its base might have been crude oil or pine resin, distilled and mixed with unknown additives to create a sticky, volatile compound. But the true genius lay in its delivery system. Pressurized bronze siphons mounted on ships, capable of spraying flames in a continuous stream. These were the flamethrowers of antiquity, powered by hand pumps and likely preheated to ensure ignition upon release. The secrecy surrounding Greek fire bordered on obsession. Emperors swore chemists to silence, and recipes were passed orally to prevent leaks. Some theories point to quicklime as a key ingredient, reacting violently with water to generate heat, a plausible explanation for its aquatic resilience. Others propose naphtha, a flammable petroleum derivative thickened with sulfur or saltpeter. The closest modern parallel might be the incendiary mixtures used in World War II, but Byzantine chemists achieved similar effects without synthetic compounds, relying instead on alchemy and trial and error mastery. Beyond warfare, Greek fire's legacy flickers in unexpected places. The same principles of pressurized fuel delivery influenced early rocketry. Byzantine engineers essentially created the precursor to liquid propulsion systems. And that sticky, persistent burn, it mirrors the chemical adhesives in today's industrial flame retardants and even certain firefighting foams designed to smother blazes. The paradox is striking, a weapon meant to destroy inadvertently advanced technologies that save lives. Yet the greatest mystery isn't just how it worked, but why its creators took the secret to their graves. Perhaps they understood the danger of unleashing such power without control, a lesson modernity has learned the hard way. When you see a rocket launch or a controlled burn in an oil field, you're witnessing the distant echo of an ancient blaze that once decided the fate of empires. In the year 132, while most of the world still blamed earthquakes on angry gods or mythical beasts, a Chinese polymath named Zhang Heng unveiled a device that would rewrite history, a bronze vessel capable of detecting quakes from hundreds of miles away. Picture this, an ornate urn adorned with 8 dragon heads, each clutching a metal ball, poised above corresponding toads with open mouths. When the earth trembled, even faintly, a hidden pendulum inside would swing, triggering one dragon to release its ball with a resonant clang into the toad below. The direction of the fallen ball revealed the quake's origin, while the force of the drop hinted at its intensity. This wasn't just art, it was the world's first seismoscope, a machine that sensed the planet's whispers 15 centuries before modern seismographs existed. The brilliance of Zhang Heng's design lay in its deceptive simplicity. Unlike modern devices that rely on electronic sensors, his seismoscope harnessed basic physics, inertia, and gravity to achieve astonishing accuracy. Historical records describe it detecting a quake 400 miles away, while the court in Luoyang felt nothing. Skeptics doubted until messengers arrived days later, confirming tremors in the exact direction the dragon had indicated. How did it work without today's technology? Scholars believe the urn contained a vertical pendulum or inverted swing that remained still while the outer vessel moved with seismic waves, dislodging a lever mechanism connected to the dragons. The precision required to calibrate such a device, accounting for different wave types and distances, suggests an understanding of Earth science far beyond its time. What's even more remarkable is how Zhang Heng's invention mirrors modern principles. Today's seismometers still use pendulums, albeit electronic ones, to measure ground motion. His directional detection system foreshadowed the networked seismic stations we rely on to triangulate earthquake epicenters and those dragon-toad pairs. They functioned like early warning indicators, not unlike the alert systems now embedded in smartphones. The seismoscope wasn't just a scientific curiosity, it was a tool for governance. In an empire where timely disaster response could prevent famine or rebellion, knowing a quake's location allowed officials to dispatch aid swiftly, a philosophy underpinning contemporary emergency management strategies. Yet the seismoscope's legacy extends beyond mechanics. It represents a pivotal shift in human thought, from viewing disasters as supernatural punishments to understanding them as measurable phenomena. Zhang Heng's work laid groundwork for the predictive models now used in earthquake engineering, from Japan's skyscrapers to California's early warning apps. Modern researchers have even recreated his device using historical descriptions, proving its feasibility with materials available in the 2nd century. Some replicas achieve 80% accuracy in lab simulations, a testament to the sophistication of ancient innovation. The tragedy: only one original seismoscope was ever built, lost to time like so many ancient marvels. But its influence lingers every time a tremor triggers an automated alert, reminding us that the line between past and present ingenuity is thinner than we think. When we listen to the Earth today, we're still following Zhang Heng's example, replacing dragons with diodes but chasing the same goal, turning fear into foresight. High above the dizzying gorges of the Andes, where winds howl and rockslides threaten, the Incas engineered bridges that defied logic, structures woven entirely from grass, yet strong enough to support armies and laden llamas. These weren't crude rope crossings, but sophisticated suspension bridges, some spanning over 150 feet, with anchored cables thicker than a human torso. What makes them astonishing isn't just their scale, but their material. Iku grass, a humble mountain reed, twisted and braided into cords with a tensile strength rivaling modern steel cables. The secret lay in the Incas' understanding of organic engineering, a mastery of fibers that modern architects are only beginning to replicate. Every spring, communities gathered for the bridge renewal ritual, a tradition as vital as the structures themselves. Villagers harvested fresh grass, twisting it into small ropes, which were then woven into larger cables by teams working in unison. But here's the brilliance: the Incas didn't rely on single thick ropes. Instead, they created bundles of smaller cords, distributing weight evenly to prevent catastrophic snaps. This principle, called redundancy, is the same reason modern suspension bridges use countless steel wires rather than solid bars. The cables were anchored to stone abutments using ingenious counterweight systems, with the entire bridge designed to sway slightly, absorbing wind and seismic energy like a living organism. Durability came from an unexpected source: the bridge's organic decay. Unlike steel, which rusts and fatigues, the grass fibers were replaced annually during communal festivals. This cyclical renewal turned weakness into strength, a concept now echoed in sustainable architecture, where biodegradable materials are chosen for their ability to be replenished rather than their permanence. The Golden Gate Bridge might seem worlds apart, but its engineers faced the same challenge the Incas solved: how to balance flexibility with stability. Both designs allow controlled movement to dissipate forces, proving ancient wisdom often aligns with cutting-edge physics. Perhaps the most humbling lesson lies in the bridge's social function. Building and maintaining them required entire villages to collaborate, intertwining engineering with community bonds. Modern infrastructure projects could learn from this holistic approach, where technical solutions served cultural and spiritual needs. When you cross a suspension bridge today, you're walking on the legacy of weavers who understood that true strength comes not from resisting nature, but from dancing with its rhythms. Picture a single block of red granite stretching 10 stories tall, the height of 2 giraffes stacked end to end, weighing as much as 20 elephants. Now imagine moving it 300 miles across blistering sands without cranes or diesel engines. This was the everyday genius of ancient Egyptian engineers, who transported obelisks with such precision that modern experts still debate their methods. The key wasn't brute force, but a symphony of physics and psychology. Workers likely carved these monoliths directly from quarries in Aswan, shaping them with copper chisels and pounding stones until they were flawless. But the real challenge began once the chisels fell silent: how to deliver these needles of the gods to temples hundreds of miles north without fracturing them. One theory points to a fleet of barges during Nile floods. Archaeologists found evidence of canals dug straight to quarry sites, suggesting obelisks were loaded onto ships built around them, like threading a needle with the ship as the thread. But here's the catch: some obelisks weighed over 400 tons, more than any wooden vessel could theoretically carry. That's where counterbalancing came in. Paintings show workers using external floats attached to the sides, creating a stabilizing effect similar to modern outrigger canoes. The Egyptians may have even partially submerged the barge, rolling the obelisk onto a submerged platform before refloating the ship, a technique still used today for transporting fragile offshore oil rig components. On land, the puzzle grows more complex. Sandstone reliefs depict obelisks dragged on sledges, but friction would have made this impossible without lubrication. Recent experiments reveal wetting the sand reduced pulling force by 50%. The water created a thin layer of mud that acted like nature's ball bearings. Teams of workers could then haul the sledges with ropes, guided by overseers beating drums to synchronize pulls, much like modern movers use countdowns to coordinate heavy lifts. Ramps played a starring role too. At Karnak, archaeologists uncovered a mudbrick ramp with a 7-degree incline, lined with timber tracks to minimize sideways slippage. This wasn't just a slope, it was a calibrated machine, angled precisely to balance effort and control. The most daring theory involves a pivot and drop system. To raise an obelisk at its destination, engineers might have built a giant sandbox around the base. By slowly removing sand through side channels, they could lower the monolith into position with millimeter precision, a method echoed in contemporary helicopter rescues where granular materials cushion falls. Modern engineers have tested these techniques using replica obelisks, discovering that the ancient methods often required fewer workers than assumed, sometimes as few as 200 people for a 200-ton stone, organized in rotating shifts. What's often overlooked is the psychological mastery behind these feats. Obelisk transport wasn't just engineering, it was theater. Wall paintings show priests scattering incense alongside laborers, turning back-breaking work into sacred ritual. This fusion of faith and physics kept morale high during projects spanning decades, a lesson modern project managers replicate with team-building exercises and milestone celebrations. When you see a tower crane assembling a skyscraper today, you're witnessing the spiritual descendant of those sledges and sand ramps, where human ingenuity still dances with the limits of gravity. The obelisks stand not just as monuments to pharaohs, but to the unsung engineers who taught us that no stone is too heavy when cleverness becomes your lever. In the heart of the Guatemalan rainforest, where modern cities would struggle to secure clean water, the ancient Maya built a hydraulic masterpiece that turned seasonal downpours into a lifeline. Ticol's reservoir system wasn't just about storing rainwater, it was a multi-layered purification network that rivaled modern filtration plants. At its peak, this sprawling city of 60,000 inhabitants relied on an intricate web of reservoirs, canals, and sedimentation tanks, all engineered to harness every drop of the region's erratic rainfall. The secret to their success, a brilliant partnership with nature. Unlike concrete cisterns, the Maya lined their reservoirs with porous limestone, a material that acted as both a filter and a mineralizer. As water seeped through these stones, debris was trapped while beneficial minerals like calcium infused the supply, creating water so clean it could rival today's bottled brands. But the real innovation lay in their understanding of hydraulic cycles. During the rainy season, excess water was diverted through a series of graded channels into massive holding tanks, some as deep as 20 feet. These weren't just passive pools. Engineers designed them with sloped bottoms to concentrate sediment in specific areas, making periodic cleaning easier. Smaller reservoirs positioned at higher elevations served as early warning systems. When these overflowed, it signaled that main tanks were nearing capacity, triggering controlled releases to prevent flooding. This level of foresight mirrors modern watershed management, where satellite-monitored reservoirs use similar principles to balance supply and flood risk. The Maya's grasp of water chemistry was equally advanced. Archaeologists have found evidence that they used zeolite-rich sands in some filtration channels, a volcanic material that absorbs heavy metals and bacteria, a technique now employed in modern portable water filters. Even their canal systems demonstrated ecological wisdom. By weaving them through urban plazas, they created evaporative cooling effects that tempered the tropical heat, a precursor to today's climate-responsive architecture. What's most striking is how these ancient strategies are being revived to combat 21st-century droughts. In Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, engineers are adapting Mayan limestone filtration to recharge depleted aquifers, while permaculture designers mimic their gravity-fed distribution networks in off-grid communities. California water managers, facing increasingly erratic rainfall, study Ticol's multi-reservoir approach as a model for decentralized storage. The Maya didn't just survive their dry seasons, they thrived by viewing water as a sacred resource to be meticulously recycled. Their reservoirs weren't merely infrastructure, they were living ecosystems where every component from algae to aquatic plants played a role in maintaining balance. Perhaps their greatest lesson lies in scalability. From household-scale cisterns to monumental royal reservoirs, the system was modular enough to serve all social strata, a democratic approach to water access that many modern cities still struggle to achieve. When you see a bioswale filtering stormwater today or a rooftop garden absorbing rainfall, you're witnessing the resurgence of an ancient philosophy that the best solutions don't fight nature's rhythms but amplify them. The Maya didn't have satellites or sensors, yet their water mastery whispers across centuries, reminding us that resilience begins with observing the world as it truly is. Babylon's engineers didn't just look down at their blueprints, they looked up, mapping entire cities against the constellations, as if the heavens themselves held the secret to order. Their famed Hanging Gardens, one of antiquity's lost wonders, might have been more than just botanical marvels. Some scholars now suspect their legendary irrigation systems synchronized with celestial events, using star positions to time water releases. Clay tablets reveal that Babylonian astronomers tracked Venus with mathematical precision, noting its movements down to the minute. Could this cosmic obsession have shaped their streets too? Walk through the ruins of Babylon today, and you'll notice something peculiar. Major thoroughfares align almost perfectly with solstice sunrises, while temple gates face specific stars like Aldebaran. This wasn't coincidence, it was urban planning as sacred geometry. The logic behind this celestial choreography was both practical and profound. By orienting streets to the summer solstice sun, engineers maximized shade during scorching months, creating natural cooling corridors. Meanwhile, winter alignments allowed low-angled light to penetrate deep into housing blocks, warming brick walls that radiated heat at night. But the real masterstroke lay in their water management. Cuneiform tablets describe star canals, channels positioned so moonlight reflected off their surfaces, illuminating the city while helping priests track lunar cycles for irrigation schedules. The Hanging Gardens' tiered design may have exploited this same principle, with aqueducts timed to release water when certain constellations rose, ensuring plants received moisture during coolest hours to reduce evaporation. Modern hydrologists have found similar efficiency gains by scheduling irrigation at dawn, but the Babylonians achieved it without digital timers, using the sky as their clock. Their star maps doubled as city plans. The Mul, Apin tablets, ancient Babylonian astronomical manuals, don't just catalog stars, they correlate them to earthly landmarks. The constellation Ursa Major might correspond to a particular market square, while Sirius marked the location of a key reservoir. This cosmic addressing system meant a farmer could navigate by night as easily as by day, following celestial markers to grain stores or canals. Even their numbering system reflected this harmony, 60-based math, which gave us 60-minute hours and 360-degree circles, originated from their belief that each degree represented one day of the sun's path, a perfect fusion of timekeeping and urban measurement. What's startling is how these ancient practices echo in modern smart cities. Today's urban planners use solar alignment software to optimize building placement, much like the Babylonians did with Nomen shadows. And those star canals, they're reborn in Seoul's Cheonggyecheon stream, a revitalized waterway that cools downtown temperatures by replicating natural flow patterns. The difference is we've swapped clay tablets for satellites, chasing the same goal. Cities that work with nature's rhythms rather than against them. Perhaps the most enduring lesson lies in their holistic vision. Babylonians didn't separate science from spirituality or engineering from astronomy. A street wasn't just a path, it was a celestial artery, pulsing with both practical function and cosmic meaning. When you use GPS to navigate a grid of city blocks, you're walking a pattern first traced by stargazers who understood that the best plans don't just organize space, they connect Earth to sky. Off the coast of modern-day Lebanon, where Mediterranean waves crash against weathered stone, lie the sunken remnants of an ancient maritime revolution, the Phoenician Harbour of Tyre, a masterpiece of engineering that reshaped the ancient world's trade routes. Picture a bustling port 2,500 years ago, where ships from Egypt, Greece, and beyond docked safely behind man-made breakwaters stretching like protective arms into the sea. But these weren't just piles of rock. They were precisely calculated barriers, angled to deflect waves while allowing sediment to flow past, preventing the harbor from silting up. The Phoenicians didn't just build docks, they sculpted the sea itself, creating calm havens in open water using techniques so advanced that modern engineers still replicate them. The secret weapon in their arsenal, a type of hydraulic concrete that hardened underwater, a material lost to history until Roman engineers rediscovered it centuries later. Workers mixed volcanic ash from distant eruptions with lime and crushed ceramics, creating a mortar that could set even in turbulent saltwater. They then poured this mixture into wooden forms submerged along the breakwater lines, forming massive blocks that fused with natural reefs. The result was a hybrid structure, part artificial, part natural, that absorbed wave energy instead of resisting it, much like today's eco-friendly artificial reefs. Archaeologists diving at Tyre have found these concrete cores intact after millennia, their surfaces pitted by waves but their structural integrity astonishingly preserved. But the Phoenicians' genius extended beyond materials. Their harbors were dual-chambered, with an outer port for incoming ships and an inner basin for loading and repairs, separated by a narrow channel that acted as a natural wave dampener. This design mirrored the function of modern lock systems, where water movement is controlled to stabilize ships. Even more impressive was their use of underwater topography. At Sidon, another Phoenician port, engineers exploited a submerged ridge, building atop it to create a breakwater that doubled as a shipping lane marker, a primitive version of today's navigational aids. The true legacy of these harbors lies in what they enabled: history's first global trade network. Phoenician ships carried Tyrian purple dye to Atlantic coasts, Lebanese cedar to Egyptian pharaohs, and Spanish silver to Mesopotamian kings. Their ports became nodes in a supply chain stretching from Britain to the Indian Ocean, foreshadowing the interconnected shipping lanes that now move 90% of the world's goods. Modern container ports like Rotterdam and Singapore follow the same principles. Tyre pioneered deep-water access, wave-diffusing barriers, and multi-stage docking systems. Perhaps the most poetic parallel is in sustainability. Recent studies show Phoenician concrete actually grew stronger over time as seawater minerals filled its pores, a property scientists are now trying to replicate in self-healing marine concrete. Their breakwaters also nurtured marine life, creating habitats that increased local fish stocks, an unintended benefit modern, green port initiatives deliberately emulate. When you see a cruise ship glide into a calm artificial harbor today, you're witnessing the unbroken lineage of builders who first taught us to bend the sea to commerce's will, not with force, but with quiet understanding of wind, wave, and stone. Beneath the Mediterranean waves, where sunlight barely reaches, a corroded bronze artifact emerged in 1901, a discovery so out of place that it would take a century to comprehend its true significance. The Antikythera Mechanism, no larger than a shoebox, lay encrusted with the remnants of 37 interlocking gears, each precisely cut to track the heavens. To hold this device is to cradle the world's first known analog computer, a machine that predicted lunar eclipses, charted planetary positions, and even marked the dates of ancient Olympic Games, all crafted 2,000 years before the term computer existed. The genius of the mechanism lies in its miniaturized cosmos. X-ray scans revealed differential gears, a technology historians once believed wasn't invented until the 1600s, arranged to mimic the irregular motions of celestial bodies. One gear represented the sun, another the moon, with a pin and slot system accounting for the moon's elliptical orbit. This wasn't just a clockwork model. It was a dynamic simulation of the universe, its bronze teeth calculating celestial events with a margin of error under 2 degrees. Even more astonishing, it accounted for the Saros cycle, a repeating 18-year pattern of eclipses, by using 123 teeth on a single gear, a number derived from Babylonian astronomical records. But how did ancient Greeks achieve such precision without modern tools? The answer may lie in their fusion of art and science. Craftsmen likely used hand-powered lathes to shape each gear, checking accuracy against astronomical observations passed down from generations. The device's back panels doubled as instruction manuals, with inscriptions explaining how to read its dials, some labeled with Corinthian month names, others with planetary glyphs. This wasn't just engineering, it was philosophy made tangible, a physical manifestation of the Greek belief in a mathematically ordered universe. The mechanism's legacy spins through time like one of its own gears. Medieval astrolabes borrowed its concept of layered plates, while Renaissance clockmakers unknowingly reinvented its differential systems. Today, NASA engineers study its design principles for space probes, where compact, self-calculating instruments are vital. Even the software guiding modern telescopes traces a lineage back to those bronze gears, algorithms replacing physical teeth, but solving the same celestial puzzles. Yet the most haunting question isn't how it worked, but why it stood alone. No other devices of its complexity survive from antiquity. Was it the lone survivor of a lost tradition, or the stroke of a single genius's chisel? Perhaps the answer lies in its very existence, a reminder that human curiosity has always reached beyond the visible, turning the mystery of the stars into something we could hold in our hands. When you check a weather app for the next eclipse or gaze at a planetarium show, you're following a path first charted by cogs that turn to the rhythm of the ancient sky. From above, the ruins of Angkor Wat appear like a giant circuit board etched into the Cambodian jungle, but these lines aren't traces of some ancient technology. They're the bones of the world's most sophisticated pre-industrial water network, a hydraulic masterpiece that turned monsoons into a controlled life force. At its height in the 12th century, this city of nearly 1 million people didn't just survive seasonal deluges. It thrived by transforming water into architecture. The secret lay in barrays, vast rectangular reservoirs spanning over 5 miles long, flanked by canals so precisely aligned they functioned like liquid highways. But these weren't mere storage pits, they were climate regulators, shock absorbers for a region where half the year's rain fell in weeks. The engineering behind this system reveals a deep understanding of nature's rhythms. Monsoon waters first flooded into catchment basins, where sediment settled before cleaner water flowed into the barrays via gravity-fed channels. Smaller canals then distributed this supply across rice fields and neighborhoods, while overflow routes diverted excess water to prevent flooding. The true stroke of genius, Angkor's engineers designed the entire network to mimic the natural Tonle Sap Lake's flood cycle, creating a synchronized dance between human-made and natural systems. Modern LiDAR scans show some canals ran perpendicular to natural streams, not to fight the current but to slow it, reducing erosion while maximizing absorption into the thirsty laterite soil. What's most startling is how these medieval reservoirs tackled problems we're only now confronting. During droughts, the barrays acted as heat sinks, cooling the urban microclimate, a primitive version of today's urban wetland projects combating heat islands. Their stepped designs also minimized evaporation, a technique now revived in Australia's farm reservoirs. Even the canals served dual purposes: transportation routes during dry months, flood relief valves during rains. This wasn't just infrastructure, it was a dialogue with the environment where every drop had multiple destinies. The lessons for modern cities are undeniable. Angkor's engineers didn't just build for their time, they anticipated centuries of climate variability. Studies of tree rings show their system weathered mega droughts that lasted decades, thanks to staggered water storage and redundancy. Compare that to today's metropolises, where single-point failures in concrete storm drains cause catastrophic floods. Contemporary planners from Bangkok to Miami now study Angkor's canals as blueprints for living with water rather than fighting it, a philosophy manifest in Rotterdam's water plazas and Singapore's ABC active, beautiful, clean waters program. Yet the most poignant legacy might be ecological. Sediment cores reveal the barrays nurtured thriving aquatic ecosystems, their edges lined with nutrient-rich silt that boosted soil fertility. Modern attempts to recreate this symbiosis can be seen in China's sponge cities, where permeable pavements and urban wetlands mimic Angkor's absorption capacity. When you walk through a park designed to flood gracefully during storms, you're experiencing an idea perfected by engineers who saw water not as a threat, but as a partner in shaping civilization. Their canals may lie silent under jungle vines, but their wisdom flows through every climate-resilient city, rising to meet our uncertain future. Rising from the floodplains of the Mississippi like man-made mountains, Cahokia's earthen pyramids stand as silent witnesses to an engineering tradition that transformed dirt into destiny. At their peak around the year 1050, these mounds weren't just piles of soil, they were precisely calculated structures, some covering 14 acres and rising 100 feet high, built basketload by basketload with an understanding of geotechnical science that rivals modern civil engineering. What makes them extraordinary isn't just their scale, but the meticulous methods behind their construction. Workers layered different soil types like a cake, alternating between clay-rich strata for stability and sandy loam for drainage, then compacted each layer with log rollers and bare feet until it could bear monumental wooden temples on its summit without shifting an inch. The secret to their longevity lies in what archaeologists call engineered soils. Unlike natural hills that erode over centuries, Cahokia's mounds have resisted 1,200 years of Midwestern rains and floods because their builders mixed burnt shell fragments into the clay, a primitive form of soil stabilization that modern labs have confirmed increases compressive strength by nearly 40%. This technique mirrors today's use of lime or cement additives to strengthen unstable ground for highway construction. Even more impressively, core samples reveal the mound's bases were deliberately overbuilt beyond their footprints, creating a tapered profile that distributed weight evenly. The same principle behind the angled foundations of modern skyscrapers in earthquake zones. But the real innovation was in their waste management. Cahokia's engineers didn't just move earth, they recycled it. Excavations show entire sections of mounds were built from refuse layers packed between clean soil, effectively turning trash into structural filler. This ancient version of landfill engineering used organic waste as a binding agent, with decaying matter creating natural adhesives that reinforced the soil matrix. Contemporary landfill operators employ nearly identical methods, compacting garbage in thin, stabilized layers to prevent methane leaks and subsidence, unwittingly echoing a practice perfected a millennium ago. The legacy of these earthworks extends far beyond archaeology. Modern geotechnical engineers study Cahokia's compaction techniques when designing levee systems, recognizing that the same layered approach prevents catastrophic failures during floods. The Army Corps of Engineers even adopted Native American mound building principles after Hurricane Katrina, using interlocking soil compositions to reinforce New Orleans flood barriers. And those burnt shell additives, they've inspired experimental biostabilization methods where crushed oyster shells strengthen coastal roadbeds against rising sea levels, proving ancient solutions can answer modern crises. Perhaps the most profound lesson lies in their sustainability. While our concrete jungles crack and crumble, Cahokia's mounds endure because they worked with nature's logic rather than against it. When you see a construction crew rolling fresh asphalt or a landscaper terracing a hillside, you're witnessing the unbroken lineage of engineers who first understood that the earth itself can be the greatest building material if you know how to listen to its secrets. Imagine sailing across the North Atlantic under a sky choked with clouds, the sun invisible for days, yet somehow knowing exactly which way to steer. For Viking navigators, this wasn't magic, it was science powered by a humble crystal called a sunstone. These translucent chunks of calcite mentioned in medieval sagas may have been the world's first optical navigation tools, harnessing the physics of polarized light to reveal the sun's position even when it was completely obscured. Modern experiments show that when you rotate a calcite crystal against an overcast sky, subtle changes in brightness reveal the sun's location with startling accuracy, a trick that could mean the difference between reaching Greenland or vanishing into the icy void. The genius of the sunstone lies in its simplicity. Calcite's unique molecular structure splits light into two beams, each polarized at different angles. By rotating the stone until these beams appear equally bright, navigators could pinpoint the sun's hidden position within about 5 degrees, comparable to modern compass accuracy. Recent archaeological finds support this theory. A calcite crystal discovered aboard a 16th century English shipwreck showed where patterns consistent with frequent handling, suggesting it wasn't just cargo but a working tool. Even more compelling, researchers successfully used sunstones to navigate a modern ship along Viking routes under cloud cover, proving the technique's viability without a single glance at the sky. But the Vikings didn't rely on crystals alone. Their navigation toolkit was a masterclass in environmental observation. They tracked wave patterns, noting how swells reflected off distant shores. They studied bird behavior. Puffins always flew toward land at dusk and carried ravens to release as living compasses. If the birds circled the ship, no land was near. If they flew straight, crews followed. These methods formed an integrated system where the sunstone served as a failsafe, a technological anchor in their otherwise organic approach to wayfinding. The legacy of these techniques echoes in surprising places. Modern pilots still learn to read wave patterns for emergency navigation, while polarized light sensors, direct descendants of the sunstone principle, guide everything from spacecraft to submarine periscopes. Even the algorithms behind GPS incorporate celestial navigation concepts Vikings would recognize. Their true innovation wasn't just the tool itself, but the mindset behind it, a willingness to trust subtle natural cues invisible to the untrained eye. What's most remarkable is how these ancient mariners turned a geological quirk into a survival tool. While we rely on satellites that can fail or be jammed, the sunstone works anywhere sunlight penetrates the atmosphere. No batteries, no signals, just the immutable laws of physics. In an age increasingly wary of tech dependence, the Vikings remind us that sometimes the most advanced solutions are the ones that listen to the world's oldest rhythms. Their sunstones didn't just light the way to new lands, they illuminated a path to harmonizing technology with nature's wisdom. Standing beneath the towering dome of Istanbul's Selimiye Mosque, even the softest whisper travels with crystalline clarity to the farthest corners, a phenomenon that defies physics until you meet the mind behind it. Mimar Sinan, the Ottoman Empire's architectural genius, didn't just build mosques, he engineered sonic landscapes, manipulating space and material to bend sound to his will. His secret, a marriage of geometry and intuition that turned stone into a living instrument. Take the dome's curvature precisely calculated to reflect sound waves in overlapping patterns, creating zones where multiple reflections converge to amplify even a speaker's breath. But the real magic lies in the smaller details, the strategic placement of hollow ceramic jars within walls to absorb excess bass, or the niches carved at mathematically determined intervals to scatter mid-range frequencies. These weren't decorative flourishes, they were acoustic filters, fine-tuned centuries before digital sound modeling existed. Modern audio engineers have measured Sinan's mosques with laser microphones, revealing reverberation times rivaling the finest concert halls, a staggering 2.5 seconds of echo that never muddies speech. Compare that to London's Royal Albert Hall, where architects spent decades battling whispering gallery effects until they installed fiberglass diffusers in the 1960s. Sinan solved the same problem in the 1500s by sculpting stalactite like Mucana's vaulting, their fractal patterns breaking up sound waves naturally. Even the mosque's carpeted floors played a role, dampening footstep noise while allowing vocal frequencies to soar upward, a balance modern venues replicate with adjustable acoustic panels. The legacy of these innovations echoes far beyond worship spaces. Boston Symphony Hall, lauded as one of the world's acoustically perfect venues, mirrors Sinan's principles with its shallow dome and calculated wall angles. Recording studios adopted his ceramic jar trick, swapping them for fiberglass bass traps that tame low frequencies. Perhaps most strikingly, hospitals now use his whisper amplification techniques in neonatal units, where dome-ceilinged rooms let premature infants hear caregivers' voices clearly through incubator walls. What's most humbling is how Sinan achieved this without oscilloscopes or computer models. He listened not just to sound, but to silence, understanding that architecture isn't just seen but heard. When you sit in a modern theater where every seat enjoys perfect acoustics, you're experiencing the unbroken lineage of a man who turned prayer into physics and stone into song. High on the rugged plateaus of northern Ethiopia, where the earth itself seems to resist human touch, stands a sacred city carved not from stone but into it Lalibella's 11 monolithic churches, each chiseled downward from the living rock as if the ground had opened to reveal hidden cathedrals. Picture a team of medieval artisans standing atop a solid volcanic outcrop, their tools biting into the rock not to erect walls but to expose them, carefully freeing entire buildings from the earth's embrace by removing everything that wasn't church. This wasn't construction in the traditional sense, it was reverse architecture, a process more akin to sculpting than building, where every strike of the hammer had to be perfect. One wrong blow, and the entire vision could crumble. The precision involved defies belief. Workers began by trenching deep into the bedrock, creating a massive rectangular pit around the future church. Then, like sculptors revealing a statue trapped in marble, they carved outward from the center, shaping columns, windows, and doorways from the remaining rock mass. The crowning achievement, the Church of St. George, plunges 40 feet below ground level, its cross-shaped roof flush with the surrounding plateau visible only when standing at its edge. But the true marvel lies in the details. Drainage channels cut into the floors to prevent flooding, ventilation shafts disguised as decorative windows to regulate temperature, and even an intricate network of tunnels connecting the churches, some stretching over half a mile through solid basalt. Modern engineers studying these sites have uncovered techniques that still inform tunneling projects today. The Lalibela builders understood rock stratification intuitively, following natural fault lines to reduce fracturing, a principle now formalized as rock mass classification in modern mining. Their stepped excavation process, where they removed material in controlled stages rather than all at once, mirrors today's sequential excavation method used in subway construction to prevent collapses. Even their tool marks tell a story. Narrow chisels created microfractures that made the rock easier to remove, a precursor to modern, precision blasting techniques where controlled explosions follow pre-cut grooves to minimize collateral damage. What's most striking is how these ancient methods prioritized safety. The church's underground locations weren't just spiritual choices. They provided natural insulation against earthquakes, with the surrounding rock absorbing seismic waves. Workers likely used wooden scaffolding not just for access but as early warning systems. Creaking timbers would signal dangerous shifts in the rock above. Modern tunnel boring machines might seem worlds apart from hand chisels, but they operate on the same core principle Lalibela's artisans mastered. Respect the stone's natural weaknesses, and it will reveal its strength. The legacy of these rock-hewn sanctuaries extends far beyond their spiritual significance. When engineers drill through the Alps for high-speed rail tunnels or reinforce mine shafts against cave-ins, they're applying lessons first carved into Ethiopian cliffs 8 centuries ago. The next time you walk through a subway station or drive through a mountain pass, remember, the walls around you hold echoes of builders who knew that sometimes the most profound structures aren't built up from the ground, but uncovered from within it. For centuries, Polynesian navigators embarked on voyages across thousands of miles of open ocean. No compasses, no maps, no GPS, just the stars above and the waves below as their guides. These wayfinders didn't just sail blindly into the unknown. They read the ocean like a living map, interpreting subtle clues invisible to the untrained eye. At the heart of their method was the star compass, a mental construct dividing the horizon into 32 directional houses, each marked by the rising and setting points of key stars. But this wasn't a rigid system. It adapted dynamically, shifting with the seasons as constellations migrated across the sky. Navigators memorized sequences like a celestial clock. When Hoculaire Arcturus rose in the east, it signaled the path to Hawaii, while the Southern Cross pointed the way to Aotearoa. Yet stars alone couldn't account for the unpredictability of the sea. That's where wave piloting came in, an art so refined that modern scientists are still unraveling its secrets. Polynesians detected reflected swells bouncing off distant islands, feeling these interference patterns through their hulls long before land was visible. They observed how schools of birds, like the golden plover, flew predictably toward shores at dusk, and how cloud formations clustered over land due to rising heat. Even the color of the water held meaning. Deeper blues signaled open ocean, while turquoise tints hinted at shallow reefs. These weren't random observations. They formed a layered navigation system where every clue cross-checked another, stars confirming currents, birds reinforcing cloud signs, creating a web of certainty in the trackless Pacific. What's astonishing is how these ancient techniques align with cutting-edge science. NASA has studied Polynesian wave reading methods to improve autonomous drone navigation, while modern sailors replicating these voyages discovered that star compass accuracy rivals magnetic compasses within 2 degrees. Oceanographers now recognize that the wave signatures Polynesians tracked are actually refracting ocean swells bending around islands, a phenomenon only mathematically modeled in the 1970s. Even their bird navigation finds echoes in today's bio-inspired robotics, where engineers design drones that mimic avian flight patterns to conserve energy over long distances. Perhaps the most profound lesson lies in their approach to failure. Unlike Western navigators who relied on instruments that could break or lose calibration, Polynesian wayfinders cultivated redundancy. If one sign failed, 5 others could confirm their position. This resilience mirrors modern sensor fusion technology, where AI combines multiple data streams, satellites, inertial guidance, celestial fixes to prevent single-point failures. Researchers at the Polynesian Voyaging Society have even documented navigators detecting islands by tasting seawater for terrestrial phosphates, a technique recently validated by marine chemists. In an age of satellite dependence, Polynesian navigation offers a provocative counterpoint that the most advanced system might not rely on external technology, but on honing human perception to its fullest potential. When you see a cruise ship's GPS flicker offline or a hiker lost without cell service, remember, there was once a culture that crossed oceans by reading the world as it truly was, teaching us that sometimes the oldest ways hold the newest wisdom. From above, the ruins of Teotihuacan stretch across the Mexican highlands like a vast celestial diagram, etched into the earth, every avenue, pyramid, and plaza aligned with cosmic precision. This wasn't just a city, it was a sacred calculator, its gridlocked streets mirroring the rhythms of the cosmos. Take the Avenue of the Dead, the spine of Teotihuacan, running 15 degrees east of true north. At first glance, this seems arbitrary, until you realize it points directly to the setting of the Pleiades star cluster on the horizon, a celestial event marking the beginning of the agricultural cycle. Even more astonishing, the Pyramid of the Sun aligns with the Sun's zenith passage, the 2 days each year when the noon sun casts no shadow, a phenomenon the Maya also tracked with their own observatories. But Teotihuacan's engineers didn't stop there. The entire city functions as a scaled model of the solar system, with temples spaced at intervals proportional to planetary orbits. The Pyramid of the Sun's base perimeter equals exactly 100 times its height, a ratio mirroring the Earth's circumference to its polar radius, knowledge supposedly beyond ancient reach. What's truly groundbreaking is how this celestial choreography translates to urban functionality. Modern LiDAR scans reveal subterranean channels beneath the city, directing water flow in patterns that mimic the Milky Way's apparent path across the sky. These weren't just symbolic gestures, they were hydraulic solutions. During rainy seasons, water cascaded down the Avenue of the Dead in controlled torrents, channeled by slight inclines calculated to prevent erosion while replenishing reservoirs, a precursor to today's sponge city drainage systems. Even the placement of residential compounds followed solar principles, with window angles optimized to capture winter sunlight while deflecting summer heat, reducing the need for artificial heating or cooling. Parallels to contemporary smart cities are uncanny. Like modern planners using GIS mapping to optimize traffic flow, Teotihuacan's designers positioned neighborhoods based on celestial cycles and trade routes. Their tripartite zoning ritual center, elite districts, artisan quarters mirrors the mixed-use urban planning now championed by architects like Zhang. But whereas today's cities rely on digital sensors, Teotihuacan used stone markers and shadow play. The Pyramid of the Moon's staircases, for instance, double as giant calendrical devices. When the sun strikes specific steps during solstices, it signals time for market rotations or religious festivals, much like algorithmic scheduling in modern logistics hubs. Recent discoveries hint at even deeper sophistication. Archaeologists found traces of reflective mica sheets embedded in key structures, possibly used to amplify starlight for nighttime navigation or ceremonies, an ancient version of the light-refracting panels now used in Dubai's solar-powered skyscrapers. The city's pigment chemistry also reveals intent. Red-painted buildings clustered near sunrise-aligned streets, while blue structures faced sunset axes, creating a color-coded directional system visible even to illiterate travelers. Teotihuacan's most enduring lesson might be its holistic vision. Unlike modern cities where infrastructure is often hidden beneath streets, here every functional element, water channels, transit routes, even waste systems, was integrated into sacred geometry. When you walk through Singapore's solar-paneled gardens by the bay or Copenhagen's climate-resilient neighborhoods, you're witnessing the same philosophy reborn, that a city's greatest strength lies in harmonizing human needs with nature's patterns. The silent engineers of Teotihuacan didn't just build for their era, they left a blueprint for urban eternity. Beneath the turquoise waters of modern-day Tunisia, the remnants of an ancient naval innovation still whisper their secrets. The circular harbors of Carthage, where warships could spin on command like dancers in a deadly ballet. Picture this: two concentric rings of water, the inner one reserved for the city's formidable quinquiremes, their bronze rams gleaming as they faced outward, ready to launch in any direction at a moment's notice. The outer ring served as a bustling merchant hub, but the real stroke of genius lay in the connecting channel, a narrow, gated passage that could be sealed during attacks, turning the inner harbor into an impregnable fortress. This wasn't just a dock, it was a naval chessboard designed for speed and strategy in an era when most ports were simple linear piers. What made these harbors revolutionary was their traffic flow. Unlike traditional ports where ships had to awkwardly reverse or maneuver in tight spaces, Carthage's circular design allowed vessels to enter, rotate, and exit facing outward, like a revolving door for warships. Modern engineers have calculated that this layout reduced deployment time by nearly 70% compared to contemporary ports. The secret, a central island called the Admiralty Tower, which functioned as both command post and traffic controller. Signals from its heights coordinated ship movements with flag codes, ensuring no collisions in the tight space, a primitive version of today's air traffic control systems guiding jets on busy runways. But the true legacy of these harbors lies in their hydrodynamic intelligence. Recent sonar scans reveal the outer ring's walls were subtly angled to deflect storm surges, while the inner basin's floor sloped toward drainage channels that prevented silt buildup. This dual-layer protection inspired modern aircraft carrier docks, where outer breakwaters shield nuclear-powered behemoths while inner basins maintain precise water depths for docking. Even the rotational principle survives in today's roundabouts for maritime traffic. Think of the Panama Canal's expansion locks or the circular holding patterns used by container ships near Singapore's port. The Carthaginians took their secrets to the grave when Rome razed the city, but forensic archaeology has pieced together their methods. Sediment cores show they mixed volcanic ash with lime to create hydraulic concrete for the harbor walls, a recipe later adopted and perfected by the Romans. Divers have even recovered wooden pilings with spiral grooves that reduced vortex shedding, preventing erosion around the structures, an innovation now mirrored in the helical strakes on offshore oil rigs to minimize current damage. What's most striking is how these ancient engineers anticipated modern problems. The circular design wasn't just about efficiency, it was about resilience. By keeping ships facing outward, Carthage could respond to threats from any compass point without wasting precious minutes turning around, a tactic echoed in today's nuclear submarine pens, where boats remain poised for rapid deployment. When you watch an aircraft carrier pivot on its axis or a container ship navigate a modern round harbor, You're seeing geometry first mastered by people who understood that in naval warfare, speed isn't just about sails, it's about smart spaces. Their harbors didn't just hold ships, they choreographed them. Buried in the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro, amid the world's first urban plumbing systems, lies another engineering marvel often overlooked: the humble brick. But these weren't just any bricks, they were mathematical perfection given physical form. Indus Valley craftsmen produced millions of them in staggering uniformity, a ratio of 4:2:1, with dimensions that varied by less than 1% across the entire civilization. To hold one is to grasp ancient standardization at its finest, each brick precisely proportioned to interlock seamlessly, creating walls that stood for millennia without mortar. This wasn't accidental consistency, it was a deliberate system of modular design, a concept so forward-thinking that it underpins modern construction from skyscrapers to suburban subdivisions. The genius of Harappan bricks lies in their fractal-like scalability. Whether building a house or a citadel, workers used the same ratio, simply stacking more units. Larger bricks for foundations distributed weight evenly, while smaller ones allowed intricate archways and drains. Archaeologists have even found bricks numbered with Indus script, possibly batch codes or assembly instructions, suggesting an early form of quality control. Compare this to contemporary Mesopotamia or Egypt, where brick sizes varied wildly between projects, and the Harappan's systematic approach seems almost futuristic. Their precision wasn't just about aesthetics, it enabled rapid construction. With standardized units, any laborer could contribute without constant supervision, much like today's prefabricated building panels snap together regardless of who installs them. Modern engineers have reverse-engineered these bricks to uncover their secrets. The 4:1 ratio length to width to height aligns with optimal load-bearing physics, minimizing stress points, a principle now encoded in international building codes. Even the brick's material composition reveals sophistication, a mix of clay, sand, and rice husks that reduced cracking during firing while creating microscopic air pockets for insulation. Contemporary green bricks mimic this recipe, substituting husks with recycled polystyrene for energy efficiency. But the real legacy of Harappan standardization echoes in today's modular construction revolution. Picture a Tokyo high-rise going up in weeks using factory-made room modules, or disaster relief housing assembled like Lego from pre-cast concrete blocks. These are direct descendants of the Indus Valley's systematic thinking. The same concept drives everything from shipping container architecture to IKEA flat-pack design philosophy. Reduce variables and you amplify efficiency. Perhaps most strikingly, Harappan bricks exemplify a mindset shift from one-off craftsmanship to replicable systems. When you snap together a bookshelf or walk through a building with identically sized windows, you're participating in a tradition of modular harmony that began with artisans who understood that true progress isn't just about building things, but about building ways to build better. Their bricks didn't just shape walls, they shaped how humanity thinks about construction itself. The thunderous crack of a taut rope releasing its load echoed across the walls of ancient Lachish in 701 BC, as the Assyrian army unveiled history's first great terror weapon, the siege engine. These weren't just scaled-up slingshots, they were precision instruments of psychological and physical destruction, capable of hurling 100-pound stones over city walls with terrifying accuracy. The secret to their power lay in torsion, a principle that would reshape both warfare and industry for millennia. Assyrian engineers twisted bundles of animal sinew or horse hair into thick springs, storing incredible energy that, when released, could propel projectiles 300 yards, a distance that forced defenders to rethink the very concept of safe behind fortifications. But the real innovation wasn't just force, it was adaptability. Early models like the Gastrophetes, a handheld crossbow siege engine, used composite bows to launch arrows, while massive lithobolos machines could switch between stone balls for smashing walls and clay pots filled with venomous snakes for biological warfare. This modular approach mirrors today's drone strikes, where payloads are swapped based on mission requirements. Archaeologists have even found Assyrian reliefs depicting adjustable counterweights, allowing crews to modify trajectory mid-siege, an ancient precursor to modern artillery's elevation controls. The leap from warfare to industry came through an unexpected byproduct: standardization. Assyrian siege trains required interchangeable parts ropes that fit any engine's torsion frame, stone shot calibrated to multiple machines. This demand for uniformity seeped into civilian life, with the same rope-making techniques used in siege engines later appearing in cranes for palace construction. The twisted fiber technology that powered catapults became the backbone of early industrial looms, where tension mechanisms wove textiles with military precision. Modern engineers still study these ancient machines for surprising insights. The trebuchet's counterweight system, perfected from Assyrian designs, inspired the gravity-assisted braking in elevators and roller coasters. Even the concept of stored mechanical energy finds echoes in today's renewable energy sector, where companies are testing torsion-based systems to capture and release wind power more efficiently. When you see a construction crane's cable system or a crossbow's trigger mechanism, you're looking at direct descendants of Assyrian battlefield innovations. Perhaps the most enduring legacy lies in the psychology of their design. Assyrian engineers understood that siege engines weren't just tools, they were theater. The slow creak of winding mechanisms, the visible straining of ropes, all served to demoralize defenders before the first stone flew. Modern military strategists call this shock and awe, but the principle was etched into clay tablets 27 centuries ago. From the terror of ancient catapults to the precision of modern railguns, the story of projectile technology remains a testament to human ingenuity's double edge, capable of both breaking walls and building civilizations. High on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, where the Mediterranean breeze whispers through ancient ruins, the theater of Epidaurus defies physics. A 2,000-year-old structure where a coin dropped on stage can be heard clearly in the back row, 60 meters away, without a single microphone. This wasn't magic, it was acoustical engineering so precise that modern sound scientists still study its curves and angles. The secret lies in the theater's perfect semicircular shape, with limestone seats acting as natural sound filters. Each row of benches reflects high-frequency sounds upward while absorbing lower frequencies, eliminating the muddy echoes that plague modern arenas. Even the spacing between seats plays a role precisely calculated to create interference patterns that amplify voices rather than cancel them. But the Greeks didn't stop at geometry. They harnessed the environment itself as part of their design. Most theaters, like Epidaurus, were carved into hillsides, using the natural slope to enhance sound projection while the surrounding landscape acted as a windbreak. The stage floor, often made of resonant wood or hollow stone chambers, functioned like a giant sounding board, much like the body of a violin. Actors' footsteps would subtly vibrate through the material, adding bass tones to their voices, an ancient version of today's subwoofer effects. Even the masks worn by performers weren't just decorative. Their exaggerated mouth openings acted as megaphones, channeling sound waves toward the audience with startling clarity. Modern architects have borrowed these principles in unexpected ways. Denver's Red Rocks Amphitheater mirrors Epidaurus hillside placement, using sandstone formations to naturally reflect sound. The Sydney Opera House's sail-like shells distribute audio as efficiently as Greek stepped seating, while Berlin's Waldboom replicates the limestone absorption effect with porous concrete. Even sports stadiums now incorporate acoustic shadows, carefully placed overhangs that prevent cheers from dissipating upward, a trick first seen in the covered walkways of theaters like Taormina in Sicily. The real breakthrough came when researchers decoded why Greek theaters sound so alive compared to modern venues. It's not just about volume, it's about timing. The staggered seating creates micro-delays. Sound reaches each row a few milliseconds apart, mimicking the natural reflections of an open space. This Haas effect tricks the brain into perceiving the voice as richer and more present. Contemporary concert halls struggle to replicate this digitally, using electronic delay systems that never quite capture the organic warmth of stone and sky. Perhaps the most humbling lesson lies in what these theaters didn't need. No speakers, no mixing boards, no feedback loops, just an intimate understanding of how sound dances with space. When you attend an outdoor concert today and marvel at the clarity, you're experiencing the unbroken legacy of builders who knew that true amplification doesn't come from forcing noise, but from collaborating with the physics of the air itself. Their stages weren't just platforms, they were instruments tuned to the frequency of human connection. Long before the sleek white turbines of modern wind farms dotted our landscapes, medieval engineers were already mastering the art of harnessing the breeze. In the arid plains of Persia as early as the 7th century, vertical axis windmills with sails made of bundled reeds or cloth turned tirelessly, grinding grain and pumping water with a quiet efficiency that put muscle and beast power to shame. These weren't primitive experiments, they were sophisticated machines, their 6 to 12 sails carefully angled to catch the wind from any direction, spinning central shafts that transferred power through a series of wooden gears to millstones below. What makes them extraordinary isn't just their age, but their adaptability. Persian windmills could be adjusted by altering sail tension or orientation, allowing operators to control speed and torque centuries before the invention of variable speed generators. Meanwhile, in the marshy lowlands of the Netherlands, a different design emerged to tackle a more urgent problem: water. Dutch horizontal axis windmills, with their iconic four-bladed silhouette, became aquatic rescue machines, their rotating arms powering Archimedes screws and bucket wheels that drained flooded land acre by acre. The real breakthrough came in their transmission systems, complex gear trains that converted the wind's circular motion into vertical pumping action, or later, into the reciprocal motion needed for sawing timber. Craftsmen used hardwood teeth painstakingly carved to interlock with minimal friction, a principle still seen in modern wind turbine gearboxes. Some Dutch mills even featured automatic braking systems, canvas sails that could be reefed like ship sails during storms, or centrifugal governors that adjusted sail pitch as speeds increased, foreshadowing today's pitch control mechanisms. The link between these medieval marvels and contemporary wind farms runs deeper than aesthetics. Modern engineers have reverse-engineered Persian vertical axis designs for urban environments where wind direction fluctuates rapidly, while the Dutch approach to energy conversion directly inspired the gear-driven generators in early 20th century wind turbines. Even the materials whisper across time. Medieval millwrights treated wood with linseed oil to prevent weathering, just as today's turbine blades receive epoxy coatings for durability. Perhaps the most profound parallel lies in their societal impact. Just as Persian windmills freed villages from grinding grain by hand, and Dutch mills reclaimed land from the sea, modern wind energy reduces dependence on finite resources. The medieval windmill wasn't just a machine, it was a quiet revolution, proving that human ingenuity could partner with nature's rhythms rather than exploit them. When you see a turbine's blade slice through the air today, you're watching the evolution of an idea first given shape by artisans who understood that the future doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers on the wind. From the towering aqueducts of Rome to the celestial maps of Polynesian navigators, the fingerprints of ancient engineers are everywhere in our modern world. These weren't just isolated feats of brilliance, they were interconnected solutions to challenges we're still grappling with today. Take Roman concrete, for instance. While our modern counterparts crumble after decades, theirs grew stronger in seawater, thanks to volcanic ash and mineral reactions. Now, scientists are racing to reverse engineer this 2,000-year-old recipe to build coastal defenses against rising sea levels. Or consider the Kanat systems of Persia, which sustained entire civilizations in arid landscapes without a single drop of fossil fuel. In an era of worsening droughts, these underground aqueducts are being revived from Morocco to Chile as blueprints for sustainable irrigation. What's most striking isn't just the sophistication of these innovations, but the mindset behind them. Ancient engineers didn't see nature as an obstacle to conquer, but as a partner to collaborate with. The Maya designed reservoirs that filtered rainwater through limestone, creating natural purification systems we're only now replicating in eco-cities. The Incas built suspension bridges from grass that swayed with the wind rather than resisting it, a principle echoed in today's earthquake-resistant skyscrapers. Even the humble brick, standardized by the Indus Valley civilization, reminds us that modular design isn't a modern concept, it's a rediscovery. As climate change reshapes our planet, these ancient solutions are gaining new urgency. Dutch engineers are revisiting medieval windmill designs to develop low-energy water pumps for flood-prone regions. Architects in the Middle East are studying wind-catching towers from ancient Persia to reduce air conditioning dependence. And in an ironic twist, modern military researchers are poring over Byzantine texts on Greek fire, not to recreate its destructive power, but to understand its self-sealing pumps for safer fuel delivery systems. But perhaps the greatest lesson lies beyond the technical. These silent engineers remind us that progress isn't just about inventing, it's about observing. The Polynesians didn't need satellites because they knew the language of waves and stars. The builders of Teotihuacan aligned their city with cosmic cycles because they saw time as a circle, not a line. In our rush to digitize everything, we risk losing that tactile wisdom, the kind that comes from hands shaping stone or eyes reading cloud patterns. So the next time you drive on a highway or drink from a tap, take a moment to think about the unbroken chain of innovation that made it possible. The past isn't just a relic, it's a living library waiting to be reopened. Which chapter speaks to you? Is it the resilient plazas of Angkor, built to weather monsoons and droughts? Or the acoustic magic of Ottoman mosques where whispers travel on carefully sculpted air? Drop your favorite ancient innovation in the comments, and let's keep the conversation going. And if you've enjoyed this journey through the hidden foundations of our world, hit that subscribe button, because history isn't just about looking back. It's about building forward, one rediscovered idea at a time.